You know, being a modder, every failure is an opportunity to test skill and to ask the question, can I fix it? And that is what we're going to ask today of the Gerber lockdown. We saw issues in my previous video that were pretty substantial. Now the question is, can I fix the problems with this tool? All right, so off camera, before we got started, I had to ask one simple question. First of all, can I disassemble the tool primarily? Because if I cannot disassemble it in any way, then we are at a non-starter. We can't even begin to fix the problems. I also spent most of last night looking over the tool itself to try to figure out why we were having the issues that we did. So I'm going to try to illustrate that as best I can, and hopefully we can see what the issues are. I'm going to use a secondary flashlight for this as well. But if we look at the Gerber lockdown, if we open up one of the tools, let me find a tool that's easy enough to open, you will notice that the lock bar starts to become solid right here, if you see where that indentation is, which means the locking liner lock is only this long. This piece of steel is still quite thick, and having it stop there versus back here means that the pressure against the individual implements is quite extreme. So what that results is incredibly strong liner locks. And that is part of the problem. Now, off camera, as I said, I tried to unscrew these. Now, these are T6s. Why did they do that? I don't know. But T6, which I knew the moment I tried to tackle these, considering how much Loctite Gerber usually puts on tools, that I was likely to break a couple of bits. So this one worked well enough, I was able to get it out, and it completely destroyed this T6, sadly. But I was able to get them loose enough that we can actually adjust them. Now, with these screws loose, now you can see there's a little bit of dimension that I've given. The question becomes, if I loosen it, will it become easier to open? Now, in the case of the scissor, that seems to be okay, but we still have major issues with the blade. And if you look, the pressure on this blade is pretty extreme. It's one of the thicker components, this one and the file. Now, maybe they bent this more than normal, but the detent here is quite extreme. It's not the tension here, it's the tension here, because the moment I do get it, it pops itself open. So what we would need to do to fix this is twofold. We'd have to cut in an area so that our thumb can get in and push up on this plate. Right now it's too flush and you can't touch it. So what we would do is we would cut an indentation in here, leaving the thickness in the back, but basically putting a 45-degree angle on this bottom bevel and maybe even the corners. And that can be done with the Dremel tool pretty easily. The same thing would have to happen everywhere. Now, the one thing that's going to do is it's going to affect the finish of the tool. And obviously, it's also going to completely void the warranty. Regardless of that fact, we're going to give it a shot in another video for this particular tool. The only one I think that's worth trying to save. I will be sending back the Gerber drive. I just don't think it offers any advantage. I can't fix the problem of having the thumb tab on the reamer. This is a great looking reamer. I would imagine it works quite well based on the geometry, but this tab makes it essentially a non-usable, drilling aspect. If you just need a little bit of a tip, then you could have shortened it further, right? There's no point. I don't like a non-locking driver, and the combination of these things means that I probably will never, ever put this in my pocket. So for that reason, we are going to end up sending back the lockdown drive back to Gerber. Now, in the case of this, there's a third issue that we found, and that is in the weight. Now, that's less of an issue in that it's something that is a known commodity. But this bottom plate is made of stainless steel, which is very, very heavy. And I wonder why they didn't take the opportunity with this beautiful pattern to instead make it skeletonized. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Maybe I counted that wrong. Places that I see that I could drill a hole and actually skeletonize it out to these nice little angled areas. So I could dramatically reduce the weight of this piece of metal while still maintaining the structural integrity that it needs to hold the blade. I'm not sure why that wasn't done here. It would have dramatically cut down on weight. It's also possible that you could do the same thing on this side, drilling out maybe this one, and not too many, maybe even the Gerber emblem. I know they won't like that, but the Gerber emblem, because that is once again weight savings that doesn't have to be there. It would take a tool that is basically 6 ounces and bring it probably closer to the 5 ounce mark, which is a bit more reasonable for a tool like this. Yes, I do think it's fixable. Either one of two things is going to happen, and I think I know which one. I'm either going to bend these lock bars so they're not pushing in quite as strong. But actually, I thought about that as a solution, and I think the best solution is to take a Dremel tool and actually cut the slot all the way back to here. Because even if I do that, it could affect the safety of the lock. I would rather it go all the way against the side and have 100% lockup, which is not ideal. If you're in the knife world, that's not something you want to see. But in the multi-tool world, it's not the end of the world. It's just something we're going to have to do. So I think that that's how we fix this. So on camera, I figure why not? What we can do at the very least is we can actually disassemble it and take a look. Since I got everything loosened up, it should be doable. So we're just going to quickly try to take everything apart. Now, thankfully, I did not need to arrest both sides, because having two T6s at the same time, the likelihood of that working would be very low. All right, so here we go. So we have the two screws. Put these over here. You know, probably should, since I had it, okay, here we go. That's better. Let's do that. So we take these out very carefully so I know which things. So this is an interesting piece here. So I may not be able to do everything I just said, in large part because I think, well, yeah, we'll see. That's where the scissor sets, so I can't necessarily drill into that. But there's still areas. It's also, this feels lighter than I expected it to be, which is quite good at least. Now, to keep things from getting marred, I always use the plier wrench for disassembly. And that way I can properly control how much pressure without marring any of the surfaces. So there's that. We have a metal plate that goes on top. It's kind of a spacer. And we have scissors, scissor spring. And I'm not a huge fan of this style of spring. It's kind of flimsy, sadly. But it's good to know it goes up like that. There. And interestingly, there's no moving washers. These look like steel, and they're kind of like proprietary shapes. Kind of interesting. Now we have this pressure plate. Now what I'm hoping is that these haven't been welded together. If they've been welded together, we're going to run into some serious problems here trying to fix this. But I guess we will find out. For science, right? I'm having a lot of trouble. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the other side and we're going to unscrew this. I think that might be the reason. We'll see what's actually holding this thing together. Interesting. So you have a blade here. You have the holder here. You know, the cool thing I do like about this, it seems like this could have potential to actually be slotted into a Leatherman frame. That could be really interesting. That might even be worth the cost alone. Okay, so these pivots. All right, I got to remember that the pivot collar part is on the scissor side. Remind me. All right, so the longer side goes towards the blade. And it does look like that, unfortunately, they did weld this thing together. All right. Well, does this pin come out? Okay, it does. Good. So basically, this is the culprit right here. So if you see the actual piece, it doesn't go cut in very far. And there's plenty of metal they could have gone. They could have gone all the way to maybe 1 centimeter or 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and it would have given a much nicer flex to this instead of having the angle that they had. One of the risks, of course, of doing this is that you may not be able to get the proper tension in the blade. So we'll have to play with that. If it turns out that we cannot fix it, then this will end up being coming donor parts. But this is what the Gerber lockdown looks like inside. And this is really the component that I think could be fixed. All you need to do is cut this in and you should have a much nicer lockup that's not super strong. That solves the detent. It doesn't solve access. So the access problem is going to have to come from actually cutting into the millings here. We're going to have to cut this. It's not milling. This is cast. But we're going to have to angle this enough. Maybe even take it and thin it out all the way down here so that the finger can actually get in and push up on the pieces. The other thing I might do is take the Dremel tool, and these lines are very smooth. There's no grip to them. Maybe cut in and actually make these sharp enough to actually get a good grip. Everything about this, slipping off this thumb stud, the location of the thumb stud relative to how long it is from the blade, that's very, very easy to slip up. And actually, the detents were always going to be that strong. So as it loosened here, it was going to spring open faster when you press it, which creates the likelihood of you putting your finger on the blade even higher. So I think this kind of was a required fix. Now maybe I can actually make this tool work. Now I don't know if this is a tool I will carry often, but if I do carry it, it needs to function. I would rather it work than have any kind of warranty. Now that being said, warranty for this only covers manufacturer's defect. It's not a Leatherman style warranty. So for me, this is an easy decision to just make it work, versus, leaving it as is. And I know everyone's going to say, well, why not just return it? Yes, that's true. But I'm in the business of informing. And by doing this, I can not only show, maybe I can show Gerber how to fix the problem, but also I can show someone who has already made the purchase and maybe somewhere sees this video down the line, they can actually have a solution. So they get out past the 30-day mark, they get it and they can't return it. Maybe there's a way they can fix it and make it usable for themselves. I don't know. We'll see. Here it is. The Gerber lockdown. I think if nothing else, the scissors were really good. They're cut very, very well. I don't know if I'll be able to use them elsewhere, but this tool is worth saving in large part because the scissors are good. I love the utility blade holder. The pry tool looks really cool. I think there's a lot of things I can do to this. I definitely think we can reduce the weight. Yeah, I think this will be a fun modifying project. Do I recommend you buying a brand new Gerber lockdown for this? Hells no. Do not do that. But feel free to sit back and enjoy, because the next time we see this tool, it's going to be modding it. Have a good one.